Hello everyone, I hope you are doing well. Today we are going to talk about grammar translation method and direct method. Okay, we are going to start with grammar translation method. Grammar translation method was first used to teach, for example, Latin. Okay, and in grammar translation method, the purpose here or the objective is not communication. The purpose here is the knowledge, is the information, is the accumulation of knowledge. Okay, and here the emphasis is on accuracy, which means that the learner who is taught using this method is expected to perform grammar and translation very well. Let's see some of the characteristics of this method. The first one is that vocabulary is taught in isolated lists, which means there is no contextualization. Teaching without a context is really difficult for the learners to grasp it and to understand it, okay? Because there is no context, there is no, let's say, situation, because situations help students to grasp and to understand the meaning implicitly, okay? Second one is that L1 or the mother tongue is used in teaching, which means that the target language is not used in the classroom. For example, if I teach, for example, French, but I will teach, for example, French using Arabic, okay, and vice versa, which means that here the target language, there is no emphasis when it comes to communication using the target language, okay, which means that the instructions are actually made using L1. Also, grammar is taught didactically. What do you mean by deductive grammar? Deductive grammar is that the teacher starts with exposing students to a rule, which means that they study the rule, then they are going to study, let's say, examples, okay? Unlike, for example, an inductive approach in which the teacher gives a situation, okay, in which learners will exactly understand the rule implicitly, okay? But in deductive grammar, okay, or using a deductive approach in teaching grammar, which means that the teacher presents the rule first, they study the rule first, then they are going to use it with examples. And the purpose of using grammar translation method is to master the grammatical structures and also to master translation, which means that the learner who is taught using grammar translation method is expected to master translation from L1 to L2 and vice versa. Also, communication or communicating using L2 is not the purpose, okay? Which means that no emphasis is actually put on communication. And here the teacher is authority, okay, while learners are just passive, which means that learners don't have the right to engage in the process of learning, which means that it is the teacher who comes up with everything, who spoon feeds, let's say, learners, which means that learners don't have any freedom at all to maybe intervene positively in the process of learning. Let's see some of the weaknesses of GTM. The first one, it neglects the communication aspect, which means that communication is neglected. Also, deductively teaching grammar might demotivate some learners, okay? Because here, inductive grammar, some students like really inductive grammar in which they are given a situation in which the rule is exactly studied or exactly touched upon implicitly, okay? But to deductively teach grammar really, let's say, demotivates some learners. It somehow dehumanizes learners, which means it doesn't give any freedom or any opportunity to students in order to get engaged in the learning process. After talking about the weaknesses of GTM, let me tell you that all methods have weaknesses and strengths, or let's say advantages and disadvantages, okay? It's the needs of learners which exactly determine what kind of method to implement, okay? So at that time, let's say the needs of learners determined, for example, a method that is, for example, really concerned with grammar and translation, which means that communication was not needed at all. Now we're going to talk about direct method. So let's try to see exactly the historical contexts from which the direct method has evolved. Okay, so direct methods came as a reaction to the pitfalls of GTM. Okay, direct method, which means that here students are exactly taught using L2 directly, which means no translation is taking place. Okay, for example, here L2 or the target language is used in all the classroom activities. Okay, that's why it is actually called direct method, which means that students study L2 using L2 directly without resorting to L1. Let's see some of its characteristics. The first one, only L2 is used, which means that L1 is neglected or L1 is turned down. Okay, so L1 is not used at all. Only L2 is used in the classroom. Also, it claims that the teacher should be a native speaker, okay, to guarantee the fluency, which means only L2 is used. So it's better that exactly the teacher is a native speaker or is a person who has a native-like accent. Also, grammar is taught inductively, okay? It's the opposite of grammar translation method, in which grammar is taught deductively, which means in direct methods, grammar is exactly taught implicitly by contextualizing and also by giving a situation, okay, by exposing students to a situation in which the form is exactly used implicitly. Let's see some of its weaknesses. The first one, it is bound in implementation, which means that only few students who can benefit from it, okay? Because most of the time it is actually implemented in private schools, okay? Which might be expensive for some learners. Also, it can only be implemented in small classes, which means it is not exactly of help, okay, in large classes. Okay, for example, if you want to teach grammar inductively, for example, here some students, okay, taking into account their different learning styles, their different levels, it might work. Also, the teacher is the responsible whether the method works well or not, obviously. Why? Because here the L2 is exactly taught directly, which means that if the learner doesn't achieve what is expected from him or her, here we can say that it's the teacher's glitch if that the learner doesn't achieve what is expected. I hope this video is helpful for you. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe so that you can get new notifications.